Begin the current daf in the Mesechta Nedarim Daf Nun Beis. Begin on the bottom of the alphabet Beis, 2 lines up at the bottom of the Amid, where the Gemara continues the next Mishnah. Again, continue the theme of like the title of this parak, Nedarim Daf. When you take a neder from a certain item, like a cooked dish or something that is cooked, what is included, what's not included? Again, that depends on the common parlance, on the terminology that's used, and that's what our Mishnah is discussed regarding that machlekes of these specific items. Today's daf. Some things discussed in today's daf are specific cases. Someone taking a neder from challah, from milk, from whey, from cheese. What's included in that? Regarding hanoidim basar, taking a neder from basar. What does meat mean? Is breitiv, the gravy, and kippah, the small meat pieces, included in basar, or is it not included? And then the Mishnah makes a very important distinction between neder and basar and neder and basar zeh. Min basar means from basar only. But basar zeh means this meat, and therefore would include whatever is a derivative from this meat, and therefore it's going to have a different halacha. What happens if, let's say, someone says, I take a neder that these olives and grapes I'm not going to taste, so then the halacha is, since you said elu, these, also, it's similar to the zeh, also it can be forbidden to them, and what comes out of them. Now, the Gemara has a question regarding she'eni toim dafka. We understand elu is dafka, that's saying whatever this is. The question is, are the words enu toim, does that also intend to include the byproducts, or no, it's the word elu and not the word she'enu time? An important halacha that comes up in today's daf is min b'she'enu minoi. When you have one species and somebody that's not the species, and one's prohibited, one's permitted, then it's going to be batal machine. If this 60, it's going to be nullifying the prohibition. If it doesn't have 60 of the proportion to the prohibited, then the isser is not batal. So begin the current daf. Daf the nafam base, 2 lines up at the bottom of the yom. It says the Mishnah, noidim l'chalav. Someone takes a neder prohibiting himself from milk. So mutter b'kaim. He's permitted to partake of kaim. What's kaim? Kaim is the water that's taken off from the milk, what's called whey. Now, the reason why is because the way it's called kaim is actually because when you curdle the milk, so it's kaim, it like stands up, it separates to another side. So since it's a waste matter, a byproduct or waste matter, so to speak, of milk, it's not included in chalav. It has its own definition, and therefore whey would be permitted. But Rabbi Yossi says no, it's going to be forbidden. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what's the reason why. Isn't that one's milk and one's whey? Why would they be forbidden? The Gemara is going to explain. Now, mina koim, if let's say someone takes a neder prohibiting himself from whey, so then mutar b'chalav, he's permitted in milk, but according to the wording of the Mishnah, it sounds like that Rabbi Yossi agrees in this halacha. He doesn't disagree, but the Gemara is going to bring a brayso that he disagrees with this halacha also. That he says that if you take a neder from whey, you are prohibited in milk. Now, Rabbi Shloimy, he continues with another case. Someone takes a neder prohibiting himself from cheese. So he says, Asaba, you're forbidden in the cheese, whether it's salted or it's unsalted. In other words, don't say, because since most cheeses are salted, so we presume that when you say cheese, you mean salted. Kamash Ralan, that the Mishnah is telling us no, that even if it's unsalted. What happens if anoidim in a basar? You take a neder from meat. It's a continued type of the bezim and aleph. Mutter b'roitiv b'kippah, says the Tanakama, you are permitted in the gravy and in the kippah. Kippah are these tiny small pieces of meat that fall to the bottom of the pot, because, as the Rosh explains, that's not called basar. Basar sounds like a shtik fleish, a piece of meat, even though this is obviously fleshings, but that's not what basar is. And therefore the Tanakama says you'd be permitted in those items. Now, however, Rabbi Hud is our girsa, but the girsa is Rabbi Yossi Eiser. He says that it's prohibited because mice has a taste of meat, so it's forbidden. It's considered meat. However, Rabbi Huda says to support Rabbi Yossi, he brings the following story. Rabbi Yossi was saying it's aser. Rabbi Huda was saying, yeah, I'll prove it to you, because Maisa, there was a story about Asulain Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon made it forbidden for us, but Beim should is bashal iboy. He says everyone likes in the chulun that you cook the eye, that you brown the eye, you put it into the chulun. He said that someone took a neder prohibiting himself from meat. He didn't even let someone eat the eggs that was cooked in the chulun. So obviously, that when you take a neder from basar, it's even the right of even the gravy is included. Like you see, Tarfon didn't let us eat the eggs that was cooked with it. However, Amrullah, they said to him, those who disagree with Rabbi Yossi, they says, Ken hadavar. Yes, the story you're saying is correct, but it's not a proof. Because Rabbi Tarfon only made it forbidden. Amosai, when did he say this halacha? It was only bizman sheyayma basar ze olai, when you say this meat is forbidden on me. Since he's saying basar ze olai, he's making it what's called shaveh nafshi chaticha di yisura. He's making this meat a shtick of isser, and therefore whatever comes out from it has the same halacha. Because when you take a neder from something, when you say davar zeh, this thing, it's not like you're saying basar. You're saying basar zeh alai. So this becomes a prohibited entity. Oh, v'nisarv ba'acher, it gets mixed with something else. Im yesh boy, if in that prohibited thing there is benois and tam, it gives enough flavor in the chalent, in the mixed thing, the permitted thing that's mixed in. For example, if you don't have 60 of heter opposite that iser, then usr, then of course it's going to be usr. But that's because you're saying basar zeh alai. That's fundamentally different than the case of min habasar, which is of meat. This is not meat if it's the small tiny pieces, if it's the gravy. But basar zeh, if you're saying this meat, this is a shtick isser, then anything that's going to even give a tam, like a shtick navaila, is going to give a tam. If you don't have 60 of heter to nullify it, of course, the eggs in the chalent are going to be prohibited like the meat that you took a neder on. Now, this is where the big ground is on this exact point. This is on the last words on the last of the white lines on the top. He says there's a problem that the Rishonim have with this Mishnah. How could we say over here that if it's going to give a taste, it's going to be usher, like when you say basar zeh alai, and it sounds like if it wouldn't be giving a taste, then it would be permitted. The problem is the Nedarim are what's called davar sheyesh lo matirin. Davar sheyesh lo matirin means to say that this prohibited item will become permitted. You don't have to do bittel. Bittel sounds like a b'diavad. Navaila fell into the chulin. The clean lady was leaning over with her ham sandwich, and it fell in. There's some bacon, whatever. It was titman. Okay, if you have enough to nullify the taste, it's going to be mutter. But there's a halacha of something called davar sheyesh matirin, which the halacha by davar sheyesh matirin is that even in 1,000 it's not going to be bottom because postastatin bittel. What do you have to nullify? It's going to be mutter. There's a way of it being permitted. You don't have to nullify the isser. The problem is the Nedarim are considered davar sheyesh matirin. The Gemara is going to say later on the New Testament Aleph, because the mitzvah to go into the chacham and be shoyl on your neder. So why are we saying that if it wasn't going to be that it was going to be shishim, that it's going to be batal? Why is it going to be batal? The Nedarim, there's a neder, the basar zeh alai. The Nedarim is a davar sheyesh matirin. There's a way to permit it, so it shouldn't be batal even in 1,000. So that says around what you could say is, and there's a lot of fundamental, interesting svaras in this round, but we're going to skip some of the raya parts. But he says like this: he says, when do you say that even in 1,000 it's not going to be bottom? That's what's called by min b'minoi, when it's the same species. Both are flesh. One's treifa flesh, one's kosher flesh. But over here, when we're saying that b'nisarav ba'acher, that if it got mixed with something else, we mean something else that's not its same min, which is really the case that the Mishnah brings of the eggs that were cooked with the flesh, with the meat, that's considered min b'she'enoi, two different species, two different types. Oh, when it's einoi minoi, says the Rana Chiddush, even it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, even if it has a way of being permitted, it will be permitted. Even in its state of isser, it will be permitted if it's going to be bottled if in the halacha of nois and tam, meaning if it's not giving a taste. And he says that's what we learned in Mishnah Masechtas Challah. That if someone puts yeast from the dough of wheat into the dough of rice, if it has a taste of grain, then it's going to be chayiv. If not, it's going to be pater. So the question is, so why did they say that tevel makes it prohibited, even the minute amount by minai? Rabbi Shloimy minai, it's to give it a taste. Now, but tevel is a davar sheyesh matirin. Of course, tevel of course has permitted because all you do is take off truma ma'aser. It's not tevel anymore. And even so, we're learning that shaloi b'minoi, it's going to be b'nais and tam. Says the Ran, you see a raya to this halacha that even though it's a davar sheyesh matirin, it will become batal b'she'enoi minoi when it's not its same type. Now, I'll skip a few lines over here. So it says, based on this, they ask on the Rav Alfas, on the Rif. The Rif writes in this halachas and Pergid Anasha regarding bread that was baked with a roasted meat in the oven. That we say that you're not allowed to eat that bread with kutach. Kutach was a milchig Babylonian dip. What happens if you have bread baking in the oven with a roasted meat at the same time, and now you want to take that bread and eat it with kutach dip? So the Rif writes that even though we hold that reichel av milsahi, what's reichel? Who was cooking in the oven at the same time? So what's the problem? All it is like some aroma that's in the oven. It's nothing. So he says that the reason is because it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. This bread has matirin, meaning you could eat this bread with meat, and therefore the bread Afilu be'elef loy batal. No, even though it's insignificant, the reicha, it's in comparison to what there is on the bread, it's very insignificant. Still, it has matirin because that reicha you could go ahead and have it with fleshig instead of having with the kutach. So it's not going to be batal. That's what the Rif says. So you can't have that bread with the kutach dip. So we see that he holds that even shaloi b'minoi, one was a roasted meat and one was this bread in the oven, it's not going to be batal. It's just that's not possible. Like we wrote, we had clear proofs that we said that by min b'shein minoi, it is going to be batal b'shishim. So that's the question they ask on the Rif. So he says that maybe the Rif was relying on what the Gemara says in Be'ed Daf Lametesam and Aleph. These are all very interesting cases, very, very interesting points that the Ran says on a lot of these ideas. He says if a woman borrows water and salt from her neighbor for her dough, so then the halacha of tchumen is that it goes however far the Baal Abayis could go, that's how far your item is. So now the bread that you made, the challah, is limited to both neighbors. Because she gave the flour and the neighbor gave the water and the salt. So now it's owned by two people, so it's limited to the tchum of both of them. So the question is asked, why? Why didn't you say that the water and the salt should be bottled to the dough? So Rav Ashi answers, says no, because it's davar shesh l'matirin. It has a permitted way of having it. You don't have to say bittel. It has a way of being permitted. So different, even the 1,000 is not going to be bottled. Because again, you could use it in a permitted way. The question is, but water and salt regarding dough is min b'sheinoi minoi. It's different types of things. That's water and salt, and that's flour. And even so, the Gemara gives a reasoning because it's a davar sheyesh l'matirin. So obviously, you see that even shaloi b'minoi, it's not going to be bottled. So you see, like the Rif, you see that even she'ein minoi, there is no bittel if it's davar sheyesh l'matirin. Says the Ran, no. If that's your raya to support the Rif, there's no raya. Why? Because water and salt are different. Why? Because since dough is only made with water and salt, with vas and zalt, so it's like min b'minoi. It's like the same type. That's why it's not going to be bottled. But if it's an echte min b'shein minoi, then it would be not like the Rif. It would be that it would be bottled, even though it's a davar sheyesh l'matirin. That's what the Ran says on that raya. So skip a few lines. So he's like, okay, how we yashim the Rif? What do we do with the Rif? The Rif sounds like that you're not going to say bittel. So he says, I could explain the Rif. It says a very interesting svara that he's going to say. When we say over here in the Mishnah that a davar sheyesh l'matirin, that something because a neder is a davar sheyesh l'matirin, that b'she'ein mina, like we have the eggs in this meat. Mamash the case of our Mishnah that's going to be bottled. It says when do we say this? It's regarding something that right now it's forbidden, but at a later point in time it's going to be permitted, like a neder, which a neder right now is forbidden, but later on go to the Rav and he's going to be mattered. It's going to be mutter. So he says, and then he takes a step back for a second. He says, because I have the following question. Since according to Rabbanan, there's a famous machlokes Rabbanan Rabbi Yehuda Rat Shas regarding min b'she'ein min and min b'minoi. It says, since according to Rabbanan, by all Isurim, min b'minoi is going to be bottled, even though it's the same type, just like she'ein minoi. The Rabbanan not machalik between min b'minoi, min b'she'ein minoi. The machlokes Rabbi Yehuda holds min b'minoi is different. No. Zelbazach, anderazach, it's going to be bottled. So the question is, why did the Chacham see fit to differentiate when it comes to the halacha of davar sheyesh l'matirin? Why specifically in that context of davar sheyesh l'matirin is there a difference between minoi and ein minoi? What's the reason? Why are we saying, as we're explaining, that's what the whole round was based on, that when we say davar sheyesh l'matirin, there's no bittul then. Zokteran, this is no, it's only by min b'minoi. But min b'she'ein minoi, then there's going to be bittul, even davar sheyesh l'matirin. Why? What would be the reason? Either not machalik in general regarding the halachas of bittul. Says, I'll explain to you why. Because the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan that they disagree regarding min b'minoi if it's battle or not. The Gemara in Menachos of Chav Beis Menaf explains that they learned it out from the same pasuk. From the same pasuk. How do they learn it from the same pasuk? They're opposite opinions from the same pasuk. It says in the pasuk, the Kohen God Yom Kippurim, it says v'lokach midam apar midam asar. He's going to take from the blood of the bull and from the blood of the he goat, which it's mixed together, and he's going to take it now and he's going to spray them together in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, even though the blood of the bull was more, a bull has more blood, we call the blood of the he goat as dam asar. So you see that the dam asar is not batal. And that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the reasoning is why? Because since it's min b'minoi, they're both the same thing, they're the same blood, so it's not going to be batal. Why? Because anything which is similar to something else does not weaken it and nullify it. Rather, it actually supports it and strengthens it. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda holds by all Isurim, when you have min b'minoi, it's not going to be batal. That's where Rabbi Yehuda gets his svar from, that min b'minoi is not going to be batal. Now, Rabbanon don't hold like this. Because even so, min b'minoi, when it comes to Isser and Heter, they're not similar to each other. Why not? Because since one is Asr and one is Mutter, because it's not fit to go after their intrinsic characteristic of their what they are, like blood, rather regarding the differences regarding Isser and Heter. That's the Nakuda. So the reason why that the Dama Par is not Mavatal Dama Sar is because since both of them are oilin, in other words, they're both kosher for Zrika, so then they can't be Mavatal one with the other. Because just like if Yehuda goes after the actual characteristics of something, is the Zel Bazach or the Nish, if it's a Zel Bazach, if it's the same thing, then it can't be Mavatal, it supports it. But it's Epis Andrish, then you could say, okay, it's going to weaken it, it's something else, a different characteristic. The Rabbanan's criterion is they go after the comparison of its heter versus isser. That's their characteristic if it's the same or different. So therefore, whatever's different in regarding to isser and heter is mamish like lumdus over here. So you don't get this in the regular daf, so at least not now. So, but this is the way the Ran's saying. He says even min b'minoi, even when it's the same type, it's going to be bottled because it's like min b'shein minoi, because one's isser, one's heter. So we consider it as different things. Therefore we say that by davar sheyesh lamatirin, in this context, the Rabbanon veered off from what they normally say to be stringent, to say like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because since this thing is not so different in the context of Isra Heter anymore, right? Remember, according to the Chachamim, we don't care if it's min b'minoi. There's still going to be bittul. Why? Because one's asur, one's mutter. So it's andrish. Because in context of defining it in parameters of permitted versus forbidden. But when you come to davar sheyesh lamatirin, that is not so different anymore than Isser. Why not? Because it's going to end up being permitted just like it. So it's very similar now. Then we say that when it's not going to be batal b'mino anymore. Because if that would be the case, then they're very similar. And again, similar things cannot be mevatal each other. First of all, because they're both the same min. And also, they're not so different anymore regarding even Isser Heter anymore. Because it's going to be mutter. So therefore, it's not going to be batal. Only by she'enoi minoi. Why by she'enoi minoi? Now they'll take on a little bit of Yehuda. That difference that they have between minoi and she'enoi minoi will even out to make it, to offset the fact that it's a davar sheyesh matirin. Because the difference between the minim will be the cause of the bittul. Because only differences allow us to do bittul. And if it's the same, there's no bittul. That's part one. That's in general their machlekes. So says the Ran, now he's going to take it from there. So therefore, whatever's asur right now, and there's no lacking in its isser, it's just going to be mutter at a later point in time. So that chesaron of the isser is lacking in its difference because it's going to be mutter later on. Since that's very small, so it's fit to complete that difference with if it's minoi versus einoi minoi. To say that by she'einoi minoi, that okay, there's still going to be bittul because it's fart andrish, because it's under the zach, even though it's lacking in its isser shabai, because it's going to be mutter at a later point in time. But and this is what he's coming to answer. When it's right now heter, like the case of Perik Mashilin, because even the water and the salt are permitted right now in the place of where both of them can walk on Shabbos, the two lady neighbors. So therefore, it's very close, the heter of the dough to the heter of the water and the salt, because even right now they're both permitted. And since they're both mutter, you cannot say, this is like the Rif, to make the difference between minoi and she'enoi minoi to supplement it, because according to Rabbanon, it's the difference between heter and isser that's better, it's stronger even than the difference of min b'she'enoi minoi, because that's actually what they disagree on Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, something that's permitted right now, like water and salt, it's more appropriate that it's not going to be batal regarding the dough, even though it's min b'she'enoi minoi, for more than it's appropriate, that it's not different, that there shouldn't be bottle, something that's right now it's forbidden, which is going to be permitted at a later point in time, regarding min b'minoi, and therefore we come out that dava sheyesh lematirin, something that has a permitted thing, b'she'enoi minoi, is going to be bottle because it's usher right now, and that's what Rav Ashi concludes over there. But by water and salt, which are permitted right now, even now it's permitted, not even later. So that's not going to be bottle regarding the dough, even though it's min b'she'enoi minoi. Now he goes back to the case of the bread that was baked with the roast in the oven. So that's what it's similar to. He says that even right now, you could eat this without the kutach dip. So therefore, logic would say that even when it's ein aminai, it's not going to be bottle. That's what the Rif was saying. That doesn't contradict what we were saying all along. And he says, even if you don't want to go so far, he says zil basatayim, go after the reasoning. You see that whatever you include, increase more heter, they were more stringent to allow the bittul to happen, because ultimately it's going to be mutter. So they said that it shouldn't be batal b'mina, and if that's the case, anything that you have more heter right now, even though right now that it has a shasa kaisha, it's more appropriate to actually be stringent on its bittul, that it shouldn't be batal, even by she'ena mina, and therefore it's no difficulty. The conclusion that we're coming out of here, that we come out that davar shesh matirin is batal b'she'ena mina. That's not difficult. Maskana within Perek Mashim, where Rav Ashi comes out that even by ena mina it's not going to be batal, because again these are talking about different cases about how you view the Isser and the Heter Shabbai, and therefore that's how the Ran is Miyashiv of the Rif. Just a very fascinating journey through the case of our mission that's coming up, that we see that there's Allah Botal Bashishim, that we're saying, it's a neder and it's double sheyesh lematirin, so how can you say it's going to be bittul? It says, min b'shein aminai. What do you do with the Rif? So it says that no, that these are talking about different cases about different types of double sheyesh matirin. And the more heter that it is, the more difficult it is to do bittul, and therefore the Ram's going to say, even over there, if it's a davar shematir, we're not going to say halacha of bittul, versus over here where it's lamaisa for us right now. Therefore, we can make it's more different, and therefore at least b'she'ena minai we are going to say the halacha of bittul. So that was what. So it depends. So that's exactly what the Ram was differentiating. If it's right now, like this bread that was cooked with the roasted meat, can essen yet? Yeah, no. I hear. Interesting question. I hear. But the bread itself is not an asr zach. That's you. It's in the gaver. It's not in the cheptze. Cheptze is not a dvar isser right now. You are limited because you ate. Yeah, but I'm saying it's not a dvar isser. No, that's tevel. Tevel is untithed. No one could eat tevel. So, but it has matin. You could go ahead and take off truma from it. So those are different cases. One is usher right now, but you could be matrid. So that's a little different than the heter. So bittul would apply. But versus if right now the water and the salt, or the case of the bread in the oven, which right now, then yes, we could even say like the Rif that there's not going to be bittul, because there's too much heter right now to say they're too similar, and then we can't say bittul. And therefore, that's that. But in contrast to our Mishnah, we will say bittul, because it is different enough to say the halacha of bittul. Now, with that, we continue with the halacha of the Mishnah that continues with another case. Continuing the same thing, when you say something, and again, with this round is almost like not even part of this thing, but it did make it very exciting. I don't know take an end from wine, because the rest of these Mishnahs all sound very simple in the way. What's included, what's not included. So takes an end of privileging himself from wine. He's permitted in a cooked dish that has a taste of wine, and the reason is because when you take a neder from yayin, it means wine that you see, not something that it's mixed with. But again, the same type of thing we made regarding basar in the Mishnah. The Mishnah makes the same difference regarding wine. You say, I take a neder yayin zeh, this wine, that I'm going to taste. But no, the top falls into a cooked dish. If the wine's giving a taste, I'm 60 opposing it. Harei asr, then it will be asr, because since you said sha'ani time that I'm going to taste, it's going to be forbidden even with tarufas, even with a mixture, because you're tasting the wine. So if that's what you said, sha'ani time, so then you're tasting it, then it's going to be prohibited. We continue with Amud Beis, where the Gemara asks v'daminu. The Gemara asks a contradiction on the halacha of our Mishnah, which is the Brisa says like this: if someone takes a neder min hadoshim, from lentils, So also about ashishim. What's the ashishim? The Yerushalmi says ashishim are lentils. They're just kneaded and fried with honey. Something we should do with Chanukah time. But it's fried in honey. So you're forbidden in ashishim because the says lentils. Rabbi Yisi says no, it's permitted. So the Ran explains the Gemara's question from Rabbi Yisi. From the Rabban, it's not difficult because even though regarding milk, we said that if you take a neder from chalav, you permit it in whey. That's because koim, whey, is not milk. But ashishim, even though it's fried in honey, it's still lentils. So we can understand why the Rabban would say you can be forbidden in the ashishim. But the question is on Rabbi Yisi, because if over here you're saying that he holds its mutter, because since it has honey, so it's called ashishim and it's not called adoshim anymore. Well, then all the more so, he should not say when you make a neder from chalav that you're forbidden in koim and whey, because that's something totally different. And besides the fact that it has a different name, so how could he say by the case of ashishim it's going to be mutter, yet by chalav you say you're going to be forbidden, you're going to be permitted in the koim. You're going to be forbidden in the koim. He holds it's included. Why over here it is not included? Says more like not difficulty. Why? This one's like where his place is. This one like where his place is. The Gemara explains. But in the place of the Rabbanon, they called milk, and they called koim. They called it different things. So therefore, it's going to be permitted. But they called whey the way of milk, and whatever has the primary categorical name on it, it's going to be forbidden. But ashishim, since it changes, it's called something else. It's not called lentils anymore. It's going to be permitted. And the Rabban also, the reason why they say by kaima it's permitted, because in their place they called milk, and kaima called kaima, in contrast to ashishim, which is the same thing, and therefore they held that it's going to be forbidden. Now, the question is, according to Rabbi Yasi, I understand when you take a neder from milk, you're forbidden in whey, because it's called kaima the chava. It still has the name chalav on it. But when you take a neder from whey, why is Rabbi Yasi saying you'll be forbidden in milk, but it's not called chalba de kaima? It's called kaima de chalba. Why would milk be forbidden if you're taking a neder from whey? Says the Ran, you could say that since you call whey, you call kaima de chalba, that makes chalav and kaim one thing. So it's going to work both ways. And therefore you make a neder from kaim, you're forbidden even on chalav. As we learned, Tanya learned in the Braisa, that hanoidim and chalav, if someone takes a neder from milk, mutar b'kaim is permitted in whey. When kaim takes a neder from whey, mutar b'chalav is permitted in milk. When the chalav takes a neder from milk, mutar b'gvida is permitted in cheese. When gvida takes a neder from cheese, mutar b'chalav is permitted in milk. When the red takes a neder from gravy, mutar b'keeper is permitted in the small pieces of the bottom of the pot. When a keeper takes a neder from the bottom piece of meat on the bottom pot, mutar b'chalav is permitted in gravy. Of Right. He says that there's a brisa that says in the Mishnah. He said that there's a brisa that says that we're going to see Rabbi Yasi, that he says that there's going to be both are going to be us or both ways. Yeah, we didn't say it over here, but he says this episode of brisa. So and then the brisa continues that. Im Omar, if he says, Boss is Allah, says, this meat is forbidden on me, then we said already in the Mishnah, also by Bereit Vabu Klipa, then you can be forbidden in the meat and the gravy and the keep it, because that's Boss is like a Chaticha di Surah. And then somebody takes another from wine, he's permitted in a and again, we said this all in the Mishnah, in the cooked dish has a taste of wine, but says, I take another, this wine I'm not going to taste, you're not going to taste it. And the Manova took it out, supposing the cooked dish. If it doesn't taste of wine, it's also then it's going to be forbidden again because you have the taste of wine. So look at the next Mishnah. Someone takes a neder from grapes, it's permitted wine, because that's not, although it's a derivative, but it's not what he has in mind. He said grapes. From olives, is permitted in oil. But let's say it says I take a neder, these olives and grapes, then I'm not going to taste them. Oh, well then forbidden in them, and what comes out of them. Which Gemara didn't explain, is the issue because you said elu, these, or is it because you said anytime I'm not going to taste it? As the Gemara says. Rambam Chama has the following question. In other words, it was obvious to Rambam Chama that with one of these terminologies would be enough. He just has a question. Elu davka? Is it specifically the words elu and not the word sha'ani ta'im, which that wouldn't make it effective at all? Or sha'ani ta'im davka? Or maybe it's the words I'm not going to taste, and elu is not effective at all. So the Gemara says, if you think to say that elu davka, that the terminology of elu is the primary wording, so sha'ani ta'im lamali. Why do you need to say the word sha'ani ta'im in the case of the Mishnah? And like the Ran explains, you could ask the question the other way also. If shani time is the primary word, why do you need to say the word elu? It's just we pick the first terminology, and the same thing would be the other way around too. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a difficulty. The Mishnah would be telling us a chiddush. The afagav the amar shani time, even though he said she'eni tayim that I'm not going to taste, the amar elu mitzvah. We're coming to say that even if you say that, you still have to say elu. Then it's going to be forbidden. The what comes out from it. But if not, not. Now, from that we also infer that if she'eni tayim is the primary word, the chiddush would be saying that even though you say elu, if you say she'eni tayim, it's going to be also not, then not. Then it's not going to be awesome. Which, when the Ran has a whole discussion, how can you say that she'eni tayim is going to be the more severe one more than elu? He wants to bring a raya that you see otherwise, and he says that's for limited context for certain things, but for other things maybe not. So the Gemara's question is, which one's the primary words? So Amar Rabbi says, Tashma, speaking right from Mishnah Daf Yomi Zayin Alf. Mishnah says, Koinim peiros ha'elu alai. If someone takes a neder prohibiting these peiros on me, Koinim lefi their neder to my mouth, then asa b'chilufeinu b'gedulein. Then they're prohibited in whatever you swap it onto, or whatever is a derivative, whatever is the outgrowth from it. Now it sounds like those things are going to be forbidden when you said elu. But what comes out from it, like the case of our Mishnah, which is what comes out from it, when you squeeze out the juice, the grape juice or the olive oil, that mutter is going to be permitted because, as the Ran explains, the Gemara assumes that if what comes out from it would be usher, that would be a bigger chiddush to let us know that what comes out of it is going to be usher. Meaning, why is that a bigger chiddush? Even though it's nishtanis suras hapedus, that's the words of the Ran. That even though the form of the figure of the peiros it changes from what you had made it forbidden, that's different than the chilufei nigudalein, where at least the entity is still around. So obviously, elu is lav dafka because you see you have a case here of elu, and you see that only chilufei nigudalein is going to be awesome, but yitzman is going to be awesome. And then the Gemara says no, to the contrary. No, that of course, even what comes out of it is going to be forbidden. But to the contrary, this is better, a bigger chiddush to let us know the chilufei and that what you're switching into, even though it's not even coming out from the etzem isser itself. Is kigdulein is what comes out of it, and for sure what actually is squeezed out from it, which is coming out from the guf isser, then for sure it's going to be us, and never there's no raya. Could be elu, definitely would include just the word elu, even without the word she'eni tayim, what comes out from it. So the Gemara says Tashma to right from the seifa of that Mishnah. Mishnah says, let's say the guy says she'eni oicha, I'm not going to eat, she'eni tayim, I'm not going to taste. Then you're permitted what it's not tasting the item. So you didn't say elu, and you're permitted what it's switched to or what grows out of it. Oh, it sounds like, that's going to be permitted. But what comes out from it is also going to be forbidden. Because as the Ran explains, if what comes out of it is going to be permitted, then for sure, regarding Sheini Oicha Sheini Toyim, that would be a bigger chiddush that's going to be permitted what comes out of it, more than permitting just Chilufei Gedelein, like we said before, because this is actually coming out from it. And that's the Gemara response. It says, you're right. It would be permitted, as we're saying. And therefore, it's not a raya how Yitzman is going to be us. It's not a raya that Sheini Time is the primary. It's just I did like Nasa B'Reishal Yitzman. Since in the ratio we didn't say what comes out from it, because like we said, the chiddush of the Isser of Chilufei Gedelein is a bigger chiddush. So we didn't say Yitzman, but could be Yitzman actually would be permitted. So we wouldn't have a raya that Sheini Time is the defining word to make even Yitzman is going to be us. Sigma says Tashma to bring a raya from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said on Rabbi Yehuda, says Ma'asim is a story when someone took a neder from Basar. Basar B'tarfet alai beitzim shenizbasli. My Rabbi Tarfet says that I can't even eat the eggs that was cooked with the meat. They said to him, okay. Amos said, when did we say this? When he says this meat is asami, zeh is like the word elu. And because someone takes a neder from something, and the sarbacha gets mixed with something else, and it gives a taste, it's going to be forbidden. Oh, wait a second. So you see, when you say zeh, which like elu, then we see that even just giving a taste, what's derivative from it, what's squeezed out from it, is going to be asur. So the Gemara says you're right. Regarding the word elu, that I didn't have a question. That, of course, the dafku. Of course, that's the primary word. You say elu, it's going to include even hayotzimenu. It's if you say from the grapes, the word zeh or elu, it's going to include the grape juice. It's going to include the alva too. Our whole question was, when you say I'm not going to taste, is that dafka? In other words, is our Mishnah saying either one would give you this halacha, or lav dafka? Maybe that's not precise. And the Chiddush is just telling us that even though you say she'eni time, if you say elu, then yes. If not, not. The Gemara says, let's bring a raya from a Mishnah we had in the Navam base. The Mishnah said, if someone takes a neder, dogim she'eni time, I'm not going to have fish in the singular or the plural. So then we say, asman is forbidden in fish, bring it down with the big or small, because we said that the big ones are called dag and the small ones are called dagim. Whether raw, whether cooked, but we said he's permitted in the small chopped up fish and in the fish brine. Now, what the Gemara wants to prove from here is that from the fact that we say that it's permitted in Torah's Trufa and the Tzir, which comes out from the fish, obviously when you say She'in Time, which the case over here of the Mishnah of Nun Aleph is Lav Dafka. So now Rabbi says no. The truth is when you say She'in Time would be Dafka, and that is if it comes out from it afterwards, then you're right, it's going to be Aser. When did the Mishnah of Nun Aleph say it's going to be permitted? Is Ukvar Yatzmahan. It already came out before the Neder, and therefore it's going to be permitted. But if it came out after you made the Neder, then I would tell you it's going to be Aser because She'in Time is Dafka. It's coming out from this, and therefore it's no Raya regarding that halacha. Thank you to any time for hosting us.